beautiful people. Hey, are you ready for some more Super Circus Class?
There was a company called Super Bubblegum in Memphis, Tennessee. And I was at that time doing a couple of shows at ABC, and among other things, radio. And they, for some reason or other, went to the program director at ABC in Chicago and said, can you build us a radio show? And Harold Stokes was a program director. He was an ex-band leader, a marvelous guy. And so we got together, Phil Patton, who was the producer of Ladies Be Seated, and I was the announcer on Ladies Be Seated, and Harold Stokes, and Bill Adams, the writer, and I. And we figured out this thing, let's do a quiz show for kids, and we'll call it Super Circus. Super Bubblegum, Super Circus. And it was a darling show. It was a half hour, and it was a quiz for little kids, for teenagers, all kinds of things. And we had Mary in the band, and I was the MC. But before they could make up their mind, well, before they could buy it, they went bankrupt. Or something happened, so they couldn't buy it. So then television came in. Right after that, television came in. Before we had a chance to sell it as a radio show, here's Harold Stokes scratching and said, what the heck do we do? I mean, I'm a radio guy. Here I'm program director now of television in Chicago. What do I do? So somebody said, well, you got a show called Super Circus. It ought to be a pretty good television show. So Cliffy the Clown, Cliffy Sabir, that marvelous actor, and I, Cliffy was hired, and we did an hour Super Circus Saturday night. There were 3 television stations, Milwaukee, Chicago, and St. Louis, from 9 to 10. We literally had to drag people out on the sidewalk, to come in. We had 4 acts, a trio, a musical trio, 3, a drum, a piano, I guess, or a saxophone, or something like that. And they played the music for the acts, and then we did audience participation. And, we'd have about 35 minutes of material, and then what do we do? Cliffy and I had to ad-lib our way, through the whole hour. It's unbelievable what we did. You know how much money I got for that thing? $35 a show. Believe that? I mean, I was making about $250, $300 a week in radio. And here I'm beating my brains out for this dumb television for $35 a show, Well, anyway, we did this for 3 weeks at Saturday night. Then they switched us to Sunday afternoon, and we got Mary Hartline in the band, and that was it. Then we just went on for another 8 years.
But say, all sitting in the center of the Super Circus Arena is our ringmaster, Mr. Claude Kirchner, who's all ready to blow the whistle that will start the Super Circus Show. So come on, gang, let's get going.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children everywhere, your Super Circus Show is on once again with more laughs, thrills, and chills for your television entertainment.
I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it was a small theater. In New York, like the booth, it's relatively small. The stage is not very big. It's not, you never put a musical in there or anything like that. Well, that's what the Civic Theater in Chicago was, very small. And this backdrop gave it the illusion of being when people saw that, they wouldn't believe it. So you mean to tell me you put that show on that stage? It's a postage stamp. It's what we did.
What is it, Mr. Kirchner? Cliffy and Scampy. Hey, you 2 guys, it's time to march. Boy!
Well, Cliffy, he told us, he says, I used to be a real boozer. And he said, I was a comedian. Mary and I, we used to make trips, for Kellogg. And this was, I think, on an airplane in Memphis, Tennessee. And we were talking to Cliffy. And I'll never forget this, neither will Mary. He said, I used to be known as H.C. Red Sabir. And he said, I was drinking up a storm, a quart a day. And he said, then I met Mariah, and that was his wife. And he said, the minute I laid my eyes on her, I never had another drink. He turned into a religious man. He was a very outstanding citizen. Oh, that ever-loving Nicky. He had an act with a car, and he had a girl that worked the act with him. And the car, it was one of those trick cars. It would stop and start, and he'd bend down and start to fix it, and boom, off it would go, that kind of thing. Typical clown style. And she was inside the car, manipulating this thing. So we had him on a couple of times. So he went to Phil Patton, our producer, and he said, Phil, I'd love to work with you guys. And he said, I do a blackface clown. So Phil auditioned him, and again, it was just magic. You know, he was superb. Nicky was a superb clown.
Three Musketeers!
And then Scampy, that was a suggestion from the agency of Canada Dry. They said, why don't you get something that relates more to kids? So they came up with a Scampy character, and Phil Patton's kid, Barty Patton, played Scampy. And then when he got too big, our agent, Sandy Dobrich, his father, Alex Dobrich, he was our Scampy.
At one point, you had over 7 million kids tuning in.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, I'm sure.
Now, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's time to turn our attention to the bandstand for some of that wonderful music. Here's one of the mighty melodies of the Big Top. And our Super Circus band is waiting only for the downbeat of our lovely queen, Miss Mary Hartline.
The way we found out that we were really successful is when the people from the J.M. Mathis agency came from New York and said, we want to buy this show for Canada Dry, for the full network. We couldn't believe it. Matter of fact, the ABC people said, oh, you don't want to buy that. You know, buy something. I said, no, I want to buy that show. Because we want to make ginger ale something other than to pour whiskey into, you know, which is really what it was. I mean, it wasn't a refreshment drink. It was, in those days, there was a lot of whiskey and ginger ale, you know, and scotch and soda. Remember Scotch and soda? And of course, Canada Dry was the bread. So, of course, it worked like a charm. You know, they came out with these small bottles, remember? And Mary Hartline would wink into the camera with Canada Dry. That's a real good wine. Oh, did that work? It sold, you have no idea how much it's, well, of course, then we got other sponsors. And then Canada Dry left us, and we had Mars, we had Kellogg, we had Weatherbird Shoes.
Sure, because Kellogg's Bread Sweet is just a wonderful waker-up for the first thing in the morning.
Boys and girls, whatever is your favorite Kellogg's breakfast treat, you'll find a generous box full of it in Kellogg's Variety Pack. Now, remember, for party treating and eating, get 3 Musketeers in the handy 6-pack or the big double dozen box.
If you see the Kinescopes, the old shows of Super Circus, you'll notice there are no film commercials because they didn't have any.
Who wrote the commercials?
The agencies.
And me.
Dads used to love tuning in Sunday afternoons just to look at her too, huh?
Are you kidding? Mothers would hate her because they knew that the fathers were, you know, and the kids adored that girl. Adored that girl. And then again, grandparents, the whole family. She was a big star.
She had a personality you just fell in love with.
Yeah.
And a marketing campaign, too, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Including the lovely Mary Hartline boots. Well, 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 congratulations to you, honey. Congratulations.
Boys and girls, these 2 colorful dancing puppets of Cliffy and me are lots of fun to play with. So why don't you get your gang together, send for us, build your own stage, and you put on your very own Super Circus.
What can you tell us about the producer, Phil?
Phil Patton.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Phil, I met Phil when he was a drummer. You really have to be long on the tooth to remember the Orrin Tucker Orchestra with Bonnie Baker. I mean, there are some people that are as old as I am that will remember this. Not many, but there are some left, you know. And in 1938, I worked for WTMJ in Milwaukee. And Phil and the Orrin Tucker Band were playing at the Schrader Hotel. And I was announcing the band as a remote, and that's how Phil and I met, he and his wife. And then after all those war years, I mean, for almost 7 years after that, we didn't see each other. And then all of a sudden, I turned up to be the announcer on Ladies Be Seated, which was a radio show, and he was a producer. So we were like, you know, where you been, where you been? And then when Super Circus started, we were in deep trouble. I knew it. And Harold Stokes came to me. He said, what do I do? What do we do? We got a good thing. I said, there's one thing to do. Get Phil Patton to produce it. Because that would make it. Because there's nobody else around that has the background and the show business pizzazz that Phil Patton had. And that was another thing. That really, I don't think we ever would have been as good if it hadn't been for him. I know darn well we wouldn't have. Ed Scotch was a superb director. You know, our first director was Greg Garrison. I don't know whether you ever heard of him or not.
Sure have. Dean Martin shows.
Dean Martin. And he was the one that really made the Kate Smith so popular. But Greg worked with us for the first year. And then he left and went to New York, and that's when we got Ed Scotch. When Super Circus went off the air, I had already decided to come to New York. And I was commuting. And so then when we finally, when I finally got my family here, just one of the clients that we had, Dixie Cup, Hickson Greist Advertising Agency, and they had this product called
Easy Pop?
Cocoa Marsh.
Oh, Cocoa
Cocoa Marsh.
Cocoa Marsh.
Cocoa Marsh. And they bought this half hour at 7 o'clock on Channel 9, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they asked me to do it. And I hemmed and hawed because I didn't want to do children's shows anymore. But they prevailed, and I did it, and I got back in this costume and got that silly little puppet that we went on for 13 years after that.
Brought to you by Marx, makers of the Rock'em Sock'em robots, the great boxing robots. Heads fly when they score a hit. Rock'em Sock'em robots. This is it. Enemy troops attacking from all sides. Situation calls for the gigantic power-packed missile cannon on wheels. This is Big Shot. Big Shot by Marx. Mounted on its huge 6-wheel truck, you can move Big Shot anywhere. Loaded with these long-range rubber-tipped missiles. Set the cap-firing hammer. Swing Big Shot's barrel with this remote control switch. The remote control elevation knob raises and lowers the barrel.
Take it down to elevation 4. There's the target. Ready. Fire!
Wow! Direct hit!
Battery-powered Big Shot comes complete with 3 rubber-tipped missiles, caps, and enemy target. Batteries not included. You're in command with the gigantic power-packed missile cannon on wheels. Bargain-priced Big Shot by Marx. Get it. And now, here comes Big Bruiser with light flashing. There's the wreck. That Big Bruiser up to it. This lever puts the power winch into action. And Big Bruiser does it again. Comes with jack, tools, fender, and spare tire to repair the wreck. Pickup truck included, too. Get battery-powered Big Bruiser by Marx. It's the Wacky Walking Toy Parade.
Here come the soldiers marching 2 by 2. Gee, by golly, there's a walking kangaroo. Wacky walking cattle waddling down the street. Oh, watch out, keep those Dumbos off your feet.
No danger. They're little wacky walking toys by Marx. No motors, no strings, nothing to wind up. Just start them downhill and watch them walk, forward or backward. There are loads of wacky walking toys, including your favorite comic strip characters.
Here comes Popeye, Walt Disney's Pluto too. Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, they can all belong to you. They're loads of fun, so come on, get with it. You can start your collection with Jiminy Cricket.
Collect them, trade them, but start today, all in full color at a tiny price. Wacky Walking Toys by Marx.